extraordinary interviewee, but how challenging was he to interview? Because obviously he had huge charisma and humour, but he could be pretty combative as well, couldn't he?
Well, he was 6'4" and weighed 17 stone. You had to take that into consideration that if he hits you, he might actually fell you. No, he was good fun. He had his little jokes, which were written for him when it came on. He was just, I mean, all that's part and parcel of the man. But the thing you remembered about him was he had this extraordinary charisma, this real star quality, which I've never really seen to such a degree in anybody else I ever interviewed.
And of course he was famously boastful, wasn't he? He described himself as being the greatest. He often referred to himself as being pretty as well, didn't he? And he was actually a very powerful character, a very powerful man in many ways.
Well, he was a huckster. He sold tickets better than anybody else I've ever met in my life. I mean, he put bums on seats, and they liked that when the bums that paid a lot of money into his coffers. I mean, he was a great salesman, and he understood the power of exaggeration and boastfulness and all that sort of thing. He made it part of himself. Was it really a part of him? Well, I don't know about that. I mean, he looked it up upon everybody and everything for a while, certainly in the early part of his career, as being a part of the audience for his boxing and that sort of. I mean, the thing about Ali you must consider about him is that he transformed boxing. He made people who didn't like boxing go to his events. He made women start enjoying it for the first time. I thought it was wonderful. And he made a powerful impact on the sport. And lots of people who he fought might not have liked him very much, but I'll tell you what, they liked the bums he put on seats, that's for sure, because he transformed the kind of money that came into the game and was available to pugilists who fought him.
Well,
he was
yes.
a remarkable man.
So a huge showman and full of jokes and poetry, sometimes anger and enormous energy as well. But did you feel you really got to know him? Did you feel you got under his skin?
I don't think anybody really got to know him, only those that he would let very close. And I don't think there were too many of those either. He was very much his own man, very much an individualist, very much he went his own way. You're never quite sure when he was joking or not. He had a view of his place in the world. He was able to laugh at himself on occasions, and on occasions he could be quite brutal. He could say things that if I had said them to him, he would have actually, or I would have been arrested as I left the building. You know, white men are devils and all that sort of stuff, which he said. And you're left wondering, did he really believe that or not, or was he just doing it for effect? But in the end, you didn't have to forgive him anything at all. I mean, if I'd have been a black man, if I'd have been like him, I would have felt like him, I'm certain. No white man can understand the black experience at all. So from that point of view, I would give him a great deal of leeway when I talk to him. And you always thought when you're talking to him that he was doing you a favour in a sense, because you were sitting there with this vast audience of people who tune in. I mean, he put 2 million onto my show every time he appeared. So you sit there feeling, you know, that this was remarkable in the sense that he was somebody who was not like any other you'd ever met, and that certainly was the case with me.
And you interviewed him 4 times. One of those occasions was around the time that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. How changed did you find him?
It was painful, actually. He shuffled into the studio, didn't come in like a dancer like he could do. He had slowed down physically and mentally. His eyes were not as dancing and light as they used to be. His neck had sort of thickened, and it was a kind of autumnal feel to him in a sense. I can only describe it that way. There was something more mellow about him, something more reflective, something more philosophical in a sense. And we talked about the possibility of boxers being damaged, mentally damaged by the fight. And of course he defended himself. Boxers always do. They don't see the possibilities. If they would, maybe they wouldn't fight. So it was an interesting from that point of view, looking back at it, consequently what happened, to look at it in a kind of a way in which, you know, you were privy to some kind of information that I mean, I looked at him at the end of that interview and our talk, and I thought, I ain't going to see you again. And so it proved to be. That was 1980, and I didn't see him again because shortly after that he retired from boxing, and that was the end of it. But those years I did see him are unforgettable. And of all the people that I've interviewed, he was the most extraordinary and unique personality.
And you say you didn't see him again. Am I right in saying that you were offered an opportunity to interview him again when his disease had progressed further and you turned it down? Is that right? And if it is right, why did you make that decision?
Yeah, that was when he was voted the athlete of the century, and I was asked in 2000 to interview him. Unfortunately, I'd seen him actually on American television about a month before, whatever it might have been. And he wasn't capable of doing an interview. I mean, I couldn't understand a word he said, and I did not want to be a party to that at all. I wanted my memories to be of this wonderful, vibrant personality chatting away like mad. So I turned it down. And I'm glad I did, because the interview was done, but they had to actually put subtitles onto it, because what he said you couldn't understand. And I wouldn't have wanted to have sat there with this great man and gone through that, not for my sake, but for his sake.
And you've interviewed some extraordinary people over the years, as Michael Parkinson, you really have. But how would you rate him as you look back in that pantheon of stars?
There are certain people who, when they walk on the set, they exude a kind of, I don't know what it is, personality, charisma, magic of some sort, and you can feel it palpably in the audience, that their reaction to them is different than to other people. And he was the one who had it most of all, and in some style. You felt like in a sense you're interviewing a Martian or something from outer space. He wasn't like anybody else. The same rules of conversation did not apply to him. And when he took off and went on one of his flights of fancy, he just adjusted his seatbelt and sat there and enjoyed it. A truly inspirational and extraordinary human being. And I was just lucky to have been around when he was around. He had a great effect on my career.
And we loved watching it as well. Sir Michael Parkinson, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing your memories of Muhammad Ali. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.